everyone is innately psychic because psychic just means of the soul. We're all psychic. We all have these abilities, but most of them have been shoved down, turned off either by us or somehow through genetics. Hey, look, we found a crashed UFO. And then the scientists, they start to back engineer it. And when you back engineer something, you discover, gee, how do they fly? There's no fuel. What's the fuel source? Okay, and where is the world economy operating off of? Fuel and how you power industry. The US government, or should I say, the US government that is being manipulated and controlled by other groups of people. They don't want the ET UFO information to come out.
Welcome. Hello, Marie.
Hello, Jean.
Oh, this is so exciting. We're here on what is one of the inaugural Conversations with Psychics, the Higher Vibe podcast that we're excited to be launching. And I am Jean Roorda, your host, and I have with me my dear friend Marie, the spirit guide, clairvoyant reader, healer, and teacher. Welcome, Marie.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you, and I'm excited about our topic. I'm a little tickled that we just decided to launch right into this topic to begin with. We're going to be talking about ETs today, the relationship between extraterrestrials and humanity, and the role that extraterrestrials have played in the history and evolution, and really beginning and ongoing evolution of humanity. So I picked Marie to talk about this because I know you have a special affinity for off-planet beings and their role here. What brought this to my mind to connect with you about today is that I noticed that historically there's been a lot of hiding about ETs or just outright denial sometimes in the media and official dialogue about it. But more recently, it seems like there's a little bit more acceptance or even matter of fact communication about it. Like, yeah, there's some craft scene over here, or it seems more recently there's a little bit more normalizing of it. So I wanted to know what you think that's all about. Is it all of a sudden okay for us to talk about ETs and it's not like, oh, that's not real?
Well, it's been a long time coming. The whole UFO ET phenomenon on the planet, it's been going on for thousands of years. The UFOs and ETs have been photographed and videoed since people had, their cameras and their video cameras. It's been out there for years. However, I'm a conspiracy theorist, okay? I'm admitting it because I know what my truth is. So all that information has just been squelched a lot by the US government, or should I say, the US government that is being manipulated and controlled by other groups of people. They don't want the ET UFO information to come out. Why? Because power and control. Really, really simple. It's power and control. If, hey, look, we found a crashed UFO. And then the scientists, they start to back engineer it. And when you back engineer something, you discover, gee, how do they fly? There's no fuel. What's the fuel source? Okay, and where is the world economy operating off of? Fuel and how you power industry. So if all of a sudden fuel is like free, it's literally in the air. It's all the atoms in the air. You figure out how to just pull it out of the air, out of our atmosphere. All of a sudden, there's no need for oil or other kinds of land fuel, if you want to call it. And therefore, it's free. And then that completely shifts the power. If you have free energy, imagine what our life would be right now. If we had free energy on the entire planet, it would free up people to have more fun in their life, more time to spend doing what they want to do, as opposed to having to make the money so they can be sure that they have gas to put in their car or heat to heat their homes with, So,
whole paradigm shift that would happen. It's not just, is humanity ready to accept that there are beings living in other places? It's more, oh, well, that might just be the excuse, right? We don't really want to allow humanity to have this much freedom. The whole economic system Yeah, it's based on this enslavement system.
If you think about it, Roswell happened in the 1940s.
Wow.
We're in the 2020s, okay? We haven't done anything with that information. And even with the government stepping in and saying we can't release these records, well, we've already gone way past the allotted time frame to keep those records confidential, to keep those documents concealed.
Yeah.
So once again, you have to ask yourself, why is this information still not being brought out? So it's being brought out by private individuals and small groups of people who are interested in ETs and UFO phenomena. So the information is there. Thank God for the internet in that regards,
Yeah.
because there's
You
information
can't
out
keep
there.
it, yeah, you can't keep it hidden.
You can't keep it hidden. Everyone has access to it now. And those are just the ETs that we're accustomed to thinking coming from the skies. We also have inner Earth beings who technically really aren't ETs because they're
They're
living and
terrestrial, yeah. We could call them ITs, interterrestrials,
there you go.
as
ITs,
opposed
different.
to the other IT. Yeah, interterrestrials, right. But still very different from the terrestrials like you and I, they on the surface. They're still very different
Yeah,
and more advanced, would you say as well?
I would say absolutely more advanced. I have forgotten about this. When I was a kid, when I was like maybe 11, 12 at the most, I got a book from the library, and I still don't know exactly why I decided to pull the book out, but it was actually a book that was talking about this civilization of people. I'll just say people that kind of looked like what we would call Sasquatch, but they were all white. They were all white, furry, and they lived inside the planet, like in the planet.
Yeah.
Normally, as a kid, I never went for sci-fi. Those weren't the kind of books that I would read. So it was odd that I would actually pick out that book. But after I finally finished that book, a couple of days later, I had a dream. And in the dream, one of those beings came to me and was standing in front of me and was communicating with me.
Yeah.
And it was communicating with me, I guess I'll say telepathically, because it didn't move its mouth and I didn't move my mouth, but it was talking to
There was a full-on
and
conversation.
I know I was 11 or 12, so I kind of just thought, oh wow, that was an interesting dream, and then I forgot about that dream for a long time, and then when I finally started getting interested in ETs and UFOs, I remembered that dream and I went, oh my God, that was one of those inner Earth beings.
Yeah.
It's like the furry Sasquatch that literally lived inside in the planet. And whoever wrote that book was writing about truth, whether maybe they knew about it, I don't know, or if they were channeling it, but they were actually writing truth about a civilization of beings that live inside the planet.
Was
So
it presented just as a story? Like
yeah,
a story?
it was just a sci-fi story.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was coming probably from either their astral experiences or their own experiences that they got to share in that more safe way.
I could just hear their mother, oh, it's just your imagination, but you got a wonderful imagination. So start writing some novels, start writing some sci-fi.
Right.
And this information was coming out. It was being, sprinkled or disseminated by writing those books. So it's great.
Yeah.
Just like with all of our ET kinds of movies that have come out over the past 20, 30, 40 years now, that's
Yeah.
all that's all talking about the ETs and that they're here, they're here.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting how much in the media there's parts of it coming from truth, from people having experiences and contacting and having a knowingness or an intuitive awareness of other beings. But then it seems like by the time it gets to be into a movie or a TV series, there's quite a bit of fear involved. It's like, the overall vibe of ET information in the media through movies is very fearful.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? What's that all about? Why,
So,
why is everything related to psychic phenomenon or ETs or anything having to do with?
so the topic of ETs and the topic of psychic phenomena is something that cannot be controlled by others. Okay, they can't control anymore the information that's coming out about the ETs. They can't stop people from looking up into the sky and taking photos or videos. Okay. And with psychics, you can tell a psychic that they're wrong, 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 but the psychic, they know that they're right, right, right. They know that their certainty. That's part of
Yes.
becoming psychic, is having your
When you see
certainty.
it, you know it. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
All you
So
can do is make people
they
great.
can't, those people who are trying to control and manipulate humanity, they are losing control. They can't control, they can't, if they can't control ETs and they can't control psychics, they can control the way it's presented to the people. Okay, so the way that they present it most of the time is fear-based.
Yeah.
Because if people are afraid of ETs or they're afraid of psychics, then those people will shy away from the information that's being presented to them because they're afraid.
Right. They won't even be.
Tactic, don't you think? Very powerful tactic using
It works.
fear.
Fear is always the basis of control. Yeah, it limits people's ability to even receive the information. They're still seeing it through all of those fear filters, even if it were presented in a loving way. This reminds me of the article you shared with me that was relaying the information from some kind of visitation or communication from an ET that was broadcast through a TV station. Was it in the UK in 1977?
Yep.
I just loved that story. That was so fascinating. I hadn't heard it before. So just a summary of it, in 1977, on some TV station in the south part of the UK, in the middle of the telecaster's communication about whatever the news was of the day, all of a sudden, everything went to that fuzzy screen and a voice came through. And it was so loving. And of course, I can't recall the entire thing right now. It was, I think, 6 minutes of communication from this being.
About that, yeah.
You remember the names? I think it's Vrillin, the name of the being.
Right.
He said, I'm Vrillin from the Ashtar Command Center. And the whole communication, to summarize it from my memory, was humanity needs to kind of course correct, right? Wake up a little bit, stop with all the war, and really just love each other. The message was like, let's eliminate all these weapons and the control and the fear and work together for a higher purpose and evolution. And then the response from people was total panic and fear, to the point where people were so programmed with fear that they even said that the message was threatening.
Another part of it was, I think Villain also said that what humanity is doing here on planet Earth is affecting the rest of our solar system. But yeah, unfortunately, the people went into fear. Now, granted, if it had been presented where Vrillin was being interviewed by a broadcaster, but since it literally interrupted the broadcast and all you're seeing is the static and you're hearing a voice, yeah, I could see how that could have creeped out people. Unfortunately, it may not have been the best way, but that was the way that they thought to attempt it.
They may have attempted other ways and been shut down. But I love that what you pointed out, and Vrillin was pointing out, that the Earth, we don't live in a bubble. What we do here affects other star systems just as much as other star systems affect us. So I think the most important aspect of discussing ETs for me is just that recognition that not only are we one global family of humanity, which is what a lot of the higher level beings are trying to communicate and get through to us as humans, there is this intergalactic community of beings from so many star systems, and having that just cut off of communication and lack of communication in any relationship, if there's no communication, there's no growth, there's no evolution. So that's one of the messages that I was getting from that being, and that was so long ago. I thought too, when I read it, has humanity gotten that message? We still have wars going on, but still appears that there's not a lot of cooperation happening.
The way I've seen things when I look at things energetically, spiritually, psychically, is there has been enough awareness. People have developed enough awareness, and enough people on our planet have developed an awareness of what's true about spirit and about ETs, that we've literally shifted timelines. 30 years ago, if someone had said, are we heading on that timeline where there's going to be horrible, massive disasters like the flood in the Bible and things like that, I would have been like, I don't know. But I started looking at timelines probably around 2012. And I just see that been enough people that have enough awareness that we have literally shifted the timeline that our planet was on. And even though to some people it looks like hell is breaking loose on the planet, and yeah, we're still going to have natural disasters, but we're not going to have epic global scope of natural disasters. We're not on that timeline anymore. We're on a little bit a nicer, a little bit smoother timeline
Yeah,
where we're not just going to turn into a ball of fire and explode.
I agree. We jumped from the doom and gloom timeline to the
Yeah,
all
yeah.
is well, let's make this party happen.
Yeah, it's still going to be challenging, but it's not going to be horrific. I think that enough people on the planet have shifted into some kind of an awareness that it's creating more space for the ETs to start coming individually to different people. When a person sends out a hello to the universe or to the skies and is like, hey, some ETs, I like to say Christ conscious ETs come visit me, as opposed to, hey, any ETs, because some of them are not
Anybody.
nice. You know, yeah, I always tell people that, no, don't go out there and say, hey, come visit me. No,
Yeah,
be
reach
very
for the higher vibe.
Christ conscious or love conscious,
Yeah,
visit me. I think that enough people have been making that connection on their own, and the ETs have been responding that they're changing the vibration on the planet so that we're moving globally in that direction.
absolutely. I'm so glad. Yeah, I think on the surface, it might still look like, because of what's currently still happening in terms of wars and just a lot of political conflict still. But when you tune into just the actual vibration of humanity as a collective, and not only where people are at, but where they're looking at and consciously creating and wanting to go, there's less of that doom and gloom, even though the fear programming has been out there for so many years. I think a lot less people are really believing that, and a lot more people are creating from that more positive knowingness of what can be, that is in more alignment with global cooperation and sharing and caring for one another. Stop fighting.
Yeah,
The overall message, just like, hey, how about we take care of each other instead of fighting against each other all the time.
there's a lot of growth that humanity still needs to go through. However, and I keep going back to the internet, there's so much information. There's so many ways for people to connect. Like you were just talking about having a relationship with the ETs or having relationships with each other. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, it was very uncommon to have access to any other TV stations other than the ones like here in the United States. Now you go on the internet and you can communicate with someone on the other side of the planet. You don't even need to know each other's languages, because now you have all these great little apps you can put on your phone. Oh, how are you today? When it comes back in 15 different languages. It's amazing. The advent of the internet has just opened up so much more space for communication for everyone on the planet to communicate, and everyone on the planet to see what is going on in other countries, and not just what the established media wants us to see going on in other countries. All of these UFO sightings, there was that huge drone sighting situation that happened in New Jersey in December that everyone was talking about. It was all over the media. They're making it seem like, oh, this is the first time that so many people have seen UFOs in the sky all at once.
Yeah, we're just finally.
You go online, you look at all these other countries, especially in Mexico. Mexico has had some amazing footage of literally like platoons or armadas of UFOs, all in groups flying across the sky. I started seeing those kinds of videos like 10 years ago. So all of that has already been going on the planet, but depending on which news outlet you listen to or you watch, they don't show you that. The ETs are visiting. They're all over Mexico. They're all over different parts of South America. They're everywhere, but our news outlets weren't showing that. So if you dig a little on the internet, then you'll see that they're there.
Yeah. For folks that are still in a place of, oh, I need the official word on this, right? Do you think that the disclosure movement has come far enough that maybe we're going to see some disclosure in terms of hearing this from any kind of authority figure that would really affect more of the mass population's acceptance of it? Or do you think that that's not even necessary because most people are like, I don't need an official word on this anymore?
I wish that so many people could have their own permission to look at this or to believe what they want to believe as opposed to believe what they're seeing on TV. I think there's going to be government disclosure, or at least more of it. I do believe that it's going to be coming out more and more over the next 3 to 4 years. Now, I also believe that a lot of people still need the government to show them the way or to give them the information. So do I think there's going to be some more disclosure coming through the government? Absolutely, I do. It's going to start happening. It already is kind of happening. The Freedom of Information Act, there's one author who's gotten like 60,000 pages of information through the Freedom of Information Act, all about the government cover-ups of the UFOs crash retrieval, of the ET bodies crash retrieval. There's lots of whistleblowers who are wanting to come forward. Some of them have already come forward, but they get annihilated by the public relations or other agencies that want to discredit them because other people don't want the information coming out. So
a little bit of an information war.
Yeah.
There's kind of a battle between the disclosure movement, like we want humanity to know this, and then just the old control forces of this information would free people up a little bit too much. It does seem that astrologically speaking and evolutionarily speaking, we're in for some big changes this year. So I wonder if this is the year for greater disclosure about not only just ETs, the role that they're playing with humanity, and then the history. I'm very interested in the history. I guess I'm very interested for humanity to not only recognize that we're one human family, right? But this is why we're one human family. Look at how we got here. You know, there's some very interesting stories about how we got here. What do you see when you look at the history of ET involvement in just the starting of the human race? Should we go back to the beginning?
Yeah, we are the product of multiple ET races that came to this planet, and they don't call this planet Earth. Okay, we call it Earth. They don't call it Earth. They have
they have different names.
The one name I know is Terra, T-R-R-A. I've heard a lot of them refer to our planet as Terra. We're saying Earth, and they're like, well, we call your planet Terra.
Yeah.
We're the biological entities that were created through combining genetics, Earthling genetics with ET genetics. And we're talking multiple different civilizations that came to our planet at least 500,000 to 1,000,000 years ago. And they started changing our DNA. And some of them did it because they just wanted like a bunch of workers. They needed someone to mine the planet or to do the labor. So they genetically enhanced the existing human at that time so that they would have a little more intelligence and be able to do more tasks. That was part of it.
Selfish, selfish reasons.
Yeah, no, seriously. There's good ETs, there's Christ conscious or Buddha conscious ETs, and then there's ETs that are negative and they're not nice.
Less evolved toward love. More on the spectrum of fear and control still, yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we were our humanity, and that's actually another reason why there's such a variety of races on our planet. From what I understand, you go to another planet and the inhabitants of those other planets tend to be very similar in appearance.
Not a huge variety of phenotypes, as they say.
Yeah, you can clearly see the genetic makeup of people. There's different colors, different skin colors, hair colors, eye colors, different heights. The only consistency is the 5-pointed star, you know, with the head, the human.
We've all got one head, 2 arms, 2 legs.
Yeah, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. You know, that's
humanoid.
That's right. The primary, you know, consistent shape of humans. Now, I know that there are insectoid races, and there's other races that have a tail. Now, what's really interesting is there's humans that are born with they call them a prehensile tail, like their spine actually has an extra extension
Oh,
on it. There's been humans born like that. And luckily nowadays they can remove that, but there's been humans born like that.
yeah. So some
And because
genetics
some
from
of
the,
our genetics from way back when, we came from one of the races was beings that had tails.
yeah.
People say the United States is a melting pot. Well, our entire planet is a
The
melting
whole
pot.
melting, the whole planet is a melting pot. It's the whole planet. This might explain why we took so long to get along and are still not quite getting along. Because this goes back to intergalactic warfare.
Unfortunately, so one of the races that came in, and as I was talking about the little tail, okay, one of the races was the reptilian races. And they're the ones that they're into power, control, fear, they're very abusive. That was one of the races that genetically programmed us. And from what I understand, they actually did something to our brainstem area and the area right above it. There is actually some kind of genetic manipulation in there that causes that whole fight or flight response that was actually programmed into our genetics from the reptilian line.
To have that.
And that is what causes so much conflict on our planet between people because we've been genetically programmed to have fight or flight, as opposed to what I believe we originally came into a body that always has harmony and oneness as the original choice, as opposed to fight or flight as the original
Didn't
choice.
always default to fear all the time. Yeah.
So
The default was before love, whereas now on a genetic level, we still seem to have this fear default. And as beings, we have to override that rather than just having
exactly. We're growing into that space where that's our default as opposed to the fight or flight.
It's even called the reptilian brain, right?
Yeah, it's even called the reptilian brain. How isn't it? That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a reason for
You know,
that.
one interesting thing that I had heard when it comes to genetics was Sasquatch. From what I understand, at least one of the races, I don't know how many races of Sasquatch there are, but at least one of the races of Sasquatch actually stems from the original human. So the original Sasquatch, that lineage did not get tampered with. One lineage of humans got tampered with, maybe even a couple of them, but the lineage that the Sasquatch come from, they never got tampered with. So they were able to evolve on Earth as normal, okay? And interestingly enough, they surpassed what we call humans years, thousands, hundred thousands of years ago, because the Sasquatch are aware beings that have the ability to shift in and out of 3D and go into 4 and 5D at will. So that's what we would have looked like had we not been genetically altered way back when by different races. I've had very limited experience with Sasquatch, but my experience is that they communicate telepathically. I've heard them vocalizing, which was really cool. I heard them vocalizing across some terrain, but they communicate with you telepathically, and they are all over the planet. And if they feel comfortable with you, they'll let you see them or hear them or at least be aware of their presence. I have never physically seen them with my eyes, but I have gotten telepaths and I've known that they're there. They'll be like, okay, we're here. Or I'll hear, in my head, I'll hear Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And oh, there's a Sasquatch around here. I'm like, oh, send them a little spiritual hi. If you want to show yourself, I'm good with it. It hasn't happened yet, but I do hear that occasionally. And it's not just in heavily wooded areas. I was out hiking in some open space in my town, which is basically a suburban area with some open space sprinkled through there. And there was one there. And I heard Sasquatch and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, wow, they're here, really? Like,
Hello.
they're there.
I love it.
Okay. I'm like, yay, I'm Sasquatch near me. Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they didn't give any specific other communication, just a hello, hi, we're here. We want you
Just
to.
a hello, hi, we're
Right.
here. They're all over the planet and there's different species of them. That's actually why the abominable snowman is white. The abominable snowman
Okay,
is
right,
Sasquatch, but he's white,
right.
white fur because he's in
And
the snow.
yeah.
So and also some of the Sasquatch are friendlier
Mhm.
than other, I'll just say species of them. Some of them are just like, no, we don't want
Yeah.
anything to do with humans and we'll be aggressive towards them. Maybe that's because maybe they've been injured. I don't know. So not all of them are the ones that I'm explaining about. These are just my personal experience. So an idea of the size of some of the Sasquatch.
Very large beings.
Mhm.
That explains why some of them might not reveal themselves to humans because either they've had a response that was less than positive. It would scare someone.
If you're out there alone, you'd be
You're
like,
not trying to see one and you're just hanging out, and all of a sudden a 7 or 8 foot tall being. Yeah. It makes sense though, the original, I want to call them the original terrestrials because they look more earthy. They're very earthy. They're hairy.
right, right.
They can live out in the forest. Humans, we need all of our things.
Right,
A
right.
lot of, we need a lot of help to survive out in the wilderness. All the
Yeah.
other earth creatures are able to handle their environment without producing some sort of thing. We're just naked. We need lots of help. We're kind of helpless, really, without all of the extra things that we make.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think of some of the genetic manipulation that happened via the more controlling side of the spectrum of ETs, really limited that awareness of telepathy as well. It kind of stunted a lot of our intuitive awareness and higher knowing. Really, what we would call from the psychic level, the upper chakra functions were
Right, yeah.
stunted. And so the evolution of humanity just got stuck in that fear and control, divide and conquer loop for quite a while. It's getting old.
Well, you're spot on. And when I think about that, I just say to myself, it's simple and really not that difficult to learn to start tuning in. I took classes to learn how to tap into it. Everyone is innately psychic because psychic just means of the soul. We're all psychic. We all have these abilities, but most of them have been shoved down, turned off, either by us or somehow through genetics. And we can just turn them, we can start using them. They're just like a muscle. You don't use a muscle, it gets weak. But if you start using the muscle, you start building it up, then it becomes strong and powerful again. So,
So we
I
as beings incarnating into these bodies, the bodies might have the genetic material available but turned off to have all of those upper level chakra functions fully turned on. But we as beings can come into those bodies and turn them on and deprogram some of those limits or filters or programs that say, you're not seeing anything. There's nothing to see. You're not psychic. And some of that is more cultural programming. But getting back to the thread of ETs manipulating genetics down way back in our history, some of those limits we hit as we incarnate, because we come, psychic means of the soul. We come in psychic. We are a soul. We come in aware. But how many of us just, it's immediately turned off, or it starts to be less apparent as we incarnate, as we actually occupy the body. I think many of us might have more psychic memories of being psychic from when we're really little children, when we're still operating on that spirit level. But then when we fully incarnate, for me, I remember hitting puberty. There's some time in the teenage years where we really come in, right? We're just like, okay, I'm fully here. Takes a while, but so much of my psychic awareness, that's when it turned off. I used to have very lucid dreams and just a lot of awareness outside of the body until right around puberty. It was like it all turned off. And because I didn't have anyone in my life to talk with about it, I tried once and I was like, oh yeah, no, I'm not going to try to talk about that. To validate what I was experiencing, I just kind of let it go and didn't think about it. And so fortunately, yes, we have various teachers and psychic practitioners who can just remind people, hey, you are psychic and you do still have this, and all of it can be reactivated, and all those layers of invalidation or programs can be shifted.
Yeah, it's so important. The work that we do is so incredibly important. And I'm not saying that from ego. I'm saying it because it's true. The work that we do is so important. I do a lot of my readings at holistic fairs. There have been so many people over the years that sit down in front of me and they'll say, you know, I've never told anyone this, but, and then they start telling me a story about the psychic experience they had that they've never told anyone. And when I say they say never told anyone, that includes their husbands and their wives, their mothers, their fathers, their siblings. They've never told anyone because they were afraid of people calling them crazy, mentally disturbed, whatever. Because there was no one there to validate. So when people sit down in front of me and they start saying, well, you know, I had this experience and I'm kind of concerned about saying it, I just give them full permission. I just say, there is nothing you can tell me at this point that I will not at least believe is possible from everything I've learned from people, from all the experiences I've had, other friends, psychics.
Nothing too weird.
Right. There's nothing you can tell me that I won't be like, that is possible. Everything is possible. And it's so important for people like us to be out there just to validate someone else's experience. Even if a person is, say, has been labeled mentally ill or emotionally unstable, a lot of that is actually based on them being an out of control psychic. They don't know what's going on. And people are telling them, you're seeing things, you're imagining things. And they start believing it. They start taking that on. And that is just so sick and sad, you know?
Very sad. Yeah. Just the amount of people labeled with various mental illnesses or experiencing things, whatever it is, bipolar or multiple personality or all these labels, that those labels have their place. But when you really look at it, this person, one, they're extremely psychic. And two, they're just totally buried in energy from all of that psychic awareness, not having any validation and not having any tools to let go of all that energy they're experiencing, internalizing the world's crazy. They're the healer of the crazy in the world, really internalizing it. That definitely was a relief for me when I discovered that. I didn't have anyone telling me I was crazy, but I certainly had those thoughts like, am I just crazy because nobody else is nobody else is seeing what I'm seeing. And when I try to talk about it, they just give me a strange look. Or nobody else is experiencing what I'm experiencing. It's super helpful and validating to be able to connect with a larger community of psychics as well. Yeah. And this whole global community of ETs is a huge part of that. Imagine for humanity to just recognize, oh, wow, there's beings out there who communicate telepathically. Oh, that's possible. That's actually already happening. To just start to validate that it's already happening, right? How many times is just the average person completely having a telepathic conversation with their loved one, but not validating it? It's amazing.
That's one thing that I did notice as I was developing my psychic abilities. It was always either intuition, so clairsentience, or claircognizance that I would access. Yeah. And I remember thinking, oh, telepathy would be so cool. Because I had, I guess, probably 20 years ago, I had one friend who was incredibly telepathic. And I was like, dang, that's really cool stuff. I want to strengthen that. Well, I wasn't able to strengthen it. But when I started getting interested in ETs, that's when it was like, okay, here comes some information. Here, I would telepathically receive information. Yeah, it was fun. What was happening is I would go out at nighttime, look at the stars, and just send out, hellos to Christ conscious ETs. And then immediately I would literally see their face go across my screen. And then there was times when I would go out there knowing ahead of time, I'm going to go look at the stars and look for the craft. I'd go out there, and as soon as I sat down, started looking, it would be like, okay, we're over here. Like they would start like flashing at me. Yeah. Because they knew I had already sent out, I didn't realize what I was doing at first. Like I'd already sent out a telepath, hey, coming,
It's so effortless. Telepathy.
And they were
our awareness. It's always broadcasting.
So I noticed that my telepathy improved after I started having an interest in ETs. Compared to what it was, say, 25 years ago, there's definitely a difference because I've gotten aware of that channel or that vibration. Now I'm having more of telepathy with people that I know. I'll be thinking about someone and then I'll call them and they'll be like, I was just thinking about you. So I have noticed that my communications with the ETs have helped me to develop my telepathy.
I think so many times we don't notice telepathy because it's just always happening. It's so simple. There's so little effort involved compared with talking. It's at a higher vibration. It's just at a specific vibration, and your awareness is just broadcasting. I think about the ETs who do communicate telepathically, and I wonder what they think about just the density of so many of us when they're just like trying to say hello and no response, no response.
Now that makes sense. Because the ETs are vibrating at a higher vibration than we are, that kind of gives us the boost into that.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say is that most 90% of contact with ETs is spiritual contact, not physical in the body. The ETs don't come and land and they come out and they talk to you. A lot of it.
I think that's why there's so much that isn't acknowledged by folks, because they need it to be, quote, real. They need to experience it physically, right? And maybe they wouldn't even believe, maybe some folks wouldn't even believe you or I if we talked about communicating with ETs. Like, well, was it sitting on your couch in front of you? You know?
I'll tell them my experience. Oh yeah, I was going to go outside, look at the stars. And when I got out there, they were waiting for me. Well, how do you know that they were waiting for you? Do you have a photograph of or a video of the craft flashing at you? I've got like dozens of photos of UFOs, but they're way out there.
It's not like a zoomed in.
Easily 70% of those photos that I took of the craft happened because I was in my home. And all of a sudden, I'll hear a UFO.
Yeah.
So I'll grab my cell phone, go out there, and I'm not even like looking. I'm just
taking pictures. And there they show up.
And at least 50% of the time when I blow up those pictures on my video screen, there's a craft there. But it's really, really tiny. It's so far in the distance. Okay, here's another one. People wanting proof? All right, people, go outside. Take your cell phone, put it on slow motion, okay? The craft are flying everywhere around us constantly, but our physical eye and our brain cannot process the speed at which they go. Yeah. So you will not register that there is a craft right in front of you, but if you have it on slow motion, there's your proof.
Wow, I love it.
I've photographed them in Butte County. I photographed them up in Washington State at East Eddy Ranch, James Gilliland's ranch. Lots of activity up there. Anyone who's listening, go there in the summertime. You will see and experience something.
There's a lot of mountains really that have a lot of activity.
They're everywhere. Going back to, physically seeing them, you can physically see with your eyes a plasma craft. And that same plasma craft can appear to go into the ground. It'll look like it's disappearing into the ground because it's a plasma craft. I saw a massive one. That was the biggest, most outrageous UFO I ever saw in my life. Was in Joshua Tree, 2009. And I saw a plasma craft go like this. It was just starting to arc and then went down, 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 down. And then it went into the ground. And I'm like looking at that. I'm watching it going, it's gonna crash. I don't understand. My brain was trying to process it. And then it went into the ground. And I went, oh my God, that must have been a plasma craft. Yeah. So physical eyes can see plasma crafts, and those can operate through multiple dimensions. So there's lots of UFO, of ET underground bases. We've got the Inner Earth Beings, but there's also bases inside the Earth, but they're at a different vibration. So they're in a different dimension. Yeah. On the Earth, they create their base inside the ground. And that's another reason why you see so much activity, is because they literally have their base in here and they're using that as
like their airport.
Yeah, really.
See, it's like LAX on a busy day or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really neat to look at the different locations for those bases and then to look at, well, because we know there's this whole spectrum of different beings from on one side of the spectrum, the more fear and control based ones to the other side, as you were saying, the Christ conscious ones. What if we're looking at just that side of the spectrum that's more supportive, helpful, positive in terms of their relationship with humanity? What do you think they're doing here on those bases and visiting, and what is their role or intention as they're
And
visiting?
since there's multiple species visiting, they have different reasons. Some of them are here to monitor what's going on with humanity. Like, is humanity growing? Are we expanding? Are we learning? Can we become part of the galactic family? They're
So maybe they're
waiting
like
to
journalists, right? They're journalists
journalists, yes.
documenting and reporting back.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. No, they're reporting back for sure. Some other ones are here stopping humanity from destroying our planet with nuclear. Nuclear weapons are dangerous to everyone, not just on our planet, but literally in our solar system. Nuclear energy, and I'm not a scientist, so I don't know a lot about it, but I know that the ETs do not want humans on Earth to be using nuclear power because nuclear energy, that explosion actually does something.
Yeah, it reverberates too
It,
far.
it reverberates, it destroys something that is very dangerous, not just to the Earth, but to the entire solar system. So some of the ETs actually hover over military bases or bases where there are nuclear weapons. And if they see that all of a sudden there's some activation or something going on that's going to escalate into a potential nuclear war, they will come. Okay, they
Yes.
have come in and they've turned off the mechanisms and they do not allow these nuclear weapons to be deployed.
They have
So,
interfered on our behalf so we don't destroy ourselves
yeah, destroy
and
ourselves and
become.
also destroy the other planets or cause problems with the other planets in our solar system. There are other crafts, other species, I think, that just use our planet as a kind of like a way station to get water.
A
I
rest
know,
area.
yeah, seriously, a personal friend of mine, I think he was in Oregon, deep in the woods, and he was way, way out there, and he came across a UFO that was pulling water out of a lake.
Wow.
So they were literally refueling. They needed the water for something. He
Yeah.
said that that UFO hovered over that lake, pulling up the water for, he said, over an hour. And he was just laying flat on the ground. He was terrified. He's like, oh my God, if I move, they're going to hear me.
Oh
He was
God.
terrified that they were going to see him because he didn't know if they were friend or foe. So he was just like, no, no, no. So they were actually taking water for whatever
Mm.
they needed. And there has been other accounts of people saying, yeah, they flew over a lake and they were just pulling out the water. I haven't heard any accounts of that happening with salt water, but I definitely have heard it with fresh water lakes.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's going to be ETs that are here because they're interested in humans, just like humans, just like human scientists are interested in different animals and what they look like. Well, we've got ETs that come here and they take genetic specimens from people. So that's some of the abductions that happen.
Right, because
Um,
that's something that I think a lot more people are familiar with stories, right? Because there's a shock factor there
yeah.
and fear factor.
Some of the abductions are being performed by races that have limited emotional ranges, so they don't realize that they're causing fear, pain, or instilling fear in the humans that they're abducting. It doesn't register in their brain because that's not how they're wired.
And as far as they know, they're just borrowing you for a moment.
And some of them are clones. Some of them are made by other races to perform those scientific research projects and then just bring the information home. So if they're a clone, they don't have the emotional background to understand how their
Right.
actions are affecting humans.
Yeah, they might not have empathy, that felt sense of when they're disturbing someone, or really different ethics in terms of boundaries.
Yeah, and unfortunately, humans years ago with infants, there was a belief, I don't know how they came up with this, but there was a belief that newborns could not feel physical pain, that their nervous system hadn't developed fully and therefore don't experience physical pain. So they would actually do little procedures on children without any kind of painkiller.
Yeah.
So if humans believe that, then why wouldn't ETs think, oh, they're not going to feel anything? They're just dumb humans or they're just earthlings. So yeah, you can understand that they're coming from a different space, cultural programming. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't know that they're hurting humans or upsetting humans.
It happens here in terms of the way some humans treat animals, or like they can't feel or they don't have emotional intelligence. Interesting. So what about the ETs that are not showing up physically, right? They vibrate at a much higher level and they're really more of support and guidance, not the ones like positively interfering in terms of keeping us from blowing each other up, but even higher level beings that are really supporting. And I'm thinking of the one we mentioned earlier, Vrillen, whose voice came through, that are really interested in humanity on a spiritual level, evolving, growing, creating a whole new way of being together on the earth. What about those? When you interact with those, how do you perceive them? What's your relationship and experience with those kinds of beings?
When I start experiencing them, usually I'm in some kind of a meditation at the time, and I'm not necessarily, going, okay, I want to talk to the ETs. Sometimes they'll just show up. And for me, when they show up, I always hear the phrase in my head, we are one.
Yeah.
And I started hearing that phrase like 25 years ago, not realizing at the time that the ETs were communicating with me 25 years ago. I only started consciously realizing when I hear that, oh, we are one. So that's what I hear. I hear we are one.
That's like the password. I love
And and
it.
for me, when I do get communication from them, it's never them telling me what to do. It's more them just making themselves known to me and reassuring me about what's going on the planet or validating me that yes, this communication is enhancing my awareness, kind of like I'm getting an upgrade. So every time I have communication with the higher vibratory ETs, it raises my vibration just a little bit more and just a little bit more, therefore expanding my awareness or at least helping me tune in on a greater level of awareness. And the sensation that I will get in my body, sometimes I'll get those Kundalini tingles. We'll start here, or else I'll get it on my shoulders, and I'm like, oh, they're here.
Yeah.
So it's a pleasant sensation. And also, it'll just be like all of a sudden, I'll feel happy. Like
Yeah,
there'll be
that's what I
this,
was gonna say. The
yeah,
vibe is definitely joyous. Yeah.
this joy. And then there's one specific species of ETs, and I call them the lion people.
Mm.
Okay, this is hysterical. I don't get words from them, but if I'm meditating, my heart chakra, I'll start to giggle.
Yeah.
There, and I'll feel like this intense urge just to start giggling and laughing.
Yeah, that's great.
And, and I'll be like, oh my God, is it the lion people? And then I'll just get like more giggly, and that's how I know it's them. That's how I know it's them. And they're only coming around once in a blue moon. But once again, if I'm at East Eddy and James Gilliland's ranch, they frequent that place.
Ah,
So that's the first time I ever experienced it there. I got that funny giddy sensation. I didn't know what it was until the next day when someone in the group was talking about it and they said, oh yeah, the lion people were here. I felt giddy and laughter. So then fast forward 2 more years goes by, I'm back at the ranch and I start feeling that giddiness and I'm like, oh my God, the lion beings are here.
yeah.
And then I was able to feel it here in my home. So now it's very clear to me that's the sensation that I know that they're around me is when I get that funny, giddy, I have to start giggling. It's right in the heart chakra, right in
Yeah.
the heart.
Love it. It's
And
like they have that's their energy signature, right? It's very recognizable.
yeah, they have a lot of amusement and that's
Okay.
how I get it. Yeah.
Mm.
And other times when I was tuning into one specific species of ET was when I do transmission meditations. So every week we would have a transmission meditation. And what was happening is during the meditations, I would just be doing the very clear visualization that accentuates the experience or enhances the experience. But all of a sudden, I would start seeing clairvoyantly, I would see like this V of energy showing up in the corner of the room where we're all meditating. And then there would be three or four of these entities that were coming into the room. And I started seeing them like almost every single time we did the meditation. And I would tell the people in my group, yeah, they're here again, they're here again. And therefore, that's who I started seeing when I was doing that meditation.
Because that was their, like when you're setting up that space to go into that type of meditation, they recognize that energy and they come in.
Exactly.
Yeah, that. So we talked about this in relationship to beings vibrating at different levels. So some people, if they haven't physically seen one, they think they haven't seen an ET. But what about ETs that have really integrated into human society? Right. Talk to me about your experience or awareness with ETs that have integrated into human society in terms of maybe working through humans, or what's the experience someone calls when they check out and somebody else comes in?
Oh, walk-ins.
Yes, walk-ins. I have definitely met folks who are walk-ins and it wasn't a human before. Now they are, you know. Yeah. Do you have anything to share about experience with either encountering someone who was a walk-in or who is an ET clearly in a human body?
All right, so regarding a walk-in, I have met, I'm blanking on his name right now, but he has a bit of a following, and he's originally, I believe, Australian, and he is a walk-in, and he's definitely an ET walk-in because he came into this man's body when the man was probably in his 50s or something. He came in, and from that moment on, he was just talking about energy and flow and joy and peace and how to create and letting go of the past. The past doesn't exist. Started channeling, and that's how people got to know him. And it's interesting. We're so programmed to just focus on the physical because when on the physical, he looks like a 65-year-old chubby guy with gray hair and bald or something. But when you sit there and you listen to him and you start feeling into his vibe, his vibration is very, very high. And I'll just say he's like bright white light when I tune into and look at him. And now that I'm thinking about it, when I look at his vibration, it's almost like the whole spirit extends beyond his physical body.
Like he's got a very profoundly, almost very real aura, very solid aura.
So it is definitely different. And my experience is I have to not focus on the words he's saying. I have to focus on the vibration that he's putting out because the words sometimes are like airy fairy, but if I just allow myself to tune into the vibration of what he's trying to project or instill the information, that's when I realized, yeah, I'm not communicating with a regular Earth entity. I'm communicating with someone from a different dimension. I was getting stuck on just listening to the words and trying to understand the words as opposed to absorbing the vibration that he is channeling. So that's my experience with someone that I know is an absolute walk-in. Now, I did have an experience. I was at a New Living Expo. So on the really big expos, spiritual and metaphysical expos here in California, I had this experience. And I was manning the Maitreya booth and the transmission meditation booth. So I'm standing there, I'm just watching people walk by, and I see these two people. And something about the younger guy really pulled my attention. And wouldn't you know, all of a sudden the younger guy shows up, he comes over and he's just like, what do you do here? And it was weird. So I started doing my little spiel. And as I'm saying it, my body, my physical body was saying, something's going on here, something's going on here, something's going on here. So I'm looking at that. And as I'm communicating to him, the energy coming out of him was just calm, serene, gentle. And when I looked more closely at him, he looked to be a young guy, maybe in his early 20s, like 21 years old. But there was a sense that his physical body was significantly older than that, yet he still was young, almost like the aging process in his body made him look a lot younger than how old he really was.
Wow.
So this is all going on in literally like a 3-minute conversation. And then at the end, he's like, okay, thank you so much for that information. And then he just kind of like walks away. And I was like, oh my God, this guy had to have been ET. Just the physical vibration I was getting from his body, the spiritual energy coming off of him, his response. It was almost like he just came up to me just to validate that I was there talking of Maitreya and transmission meditation and helping to improve things on the planet. It was like something is different about this person.
Our bodies can feel when we're around a body that's real, even if the
Now,
appearance looks human.
yeah. Yeah. So that was like a positive one. Now, I have had other experiences physically. So one of the concepts, especially with reptilians, is that reptilians can shift bodies. Shapeshifters. That's it.
Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Yeah. Yeah. You never know who you'd be staying next to in an elevator. It took a couple of experiences for me to realize what my body was communicating to me.
Yeah.
So I was at Contact in the Desert conference, and I walk in there and I'm fine. I'm in a really happy space. I'm like, this is so cool being at this conference, and all these speakers are great. And I sit down, and I'm just kind of watching people, and then all of a sudden I get this fear, like this creepy fear sensation.
Yeah.
Now, it's not the kind when there is a being or an entity floating around me, and I'm like, oh, there's a being there. No, no, no. This was my physical body saying, something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And I start scanning the room and I look behind me and it's like, what is this? What is this? And when I asked that question, the thought went through my mind, reptilian.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, there's a reptilian here. It must be a shapeshifter. Because I was looking and I'm like, I don't see any ones that, have the scaly skin or the eyes. I didn't see that yet. I was really aware that there was a reptilian somewhere. There was a shapeshifter and it was close because my body was freaking out.
My body could
say. Okay. Interesting. So after that, I've had 2, if not 3 other experiences where the exact same feeling goes through my body. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, oh, am I in danger? What's going on? And I know that specific feeling, there's a reptilian around me. I've never seen the reptilian physically.
So it takes human form.
Yeah, it has to take human form, and my body reacts to it like that. And it's just clear that it's some kind of a reptilian. And, it's not there for a good reason. It's there to either lower the vibration, to manipulate or control the vibration, to stop whatever is happening. Reptilians have the ability to look into the future very clearly using machines. They will know that if this happens, then it's going to alter the timeline in that direction. And if this doesn't happen, then we're going to stay on this timeline or something. So they will intentionally come in and try and throw a wrench into whatever is happening at an event or happening somewhere for the timeline to become the timeline that they want humanity on.
Right. So you have more of a felt sense. Like if you looked clairvoyantly, you could probably see maybe which human looking.
They're good at cloaking. For me, they're good at cloaking. I was looking around and I'm like, I don't know which one it was. There was one guy who I thought maybe it was him. It wasn't clear. So they're good at cloaking,
And they probably throw a lot of energy. That's really how I can tell is all of a sudden there's a bunch of energy being thrown at my 6th chakra and it's not very comfortable. So you have to get nice and neutral. And amused.
Yes.
They don't like amusement. Bring in the lion beings.
Yeah, bring in the lion beings. Yeah.
And the dolphins. Yeah, the reptilians disappear when the vibration gets really high. They're just can't go there.
It hurts them, really.
Yeah, it's literally like physical pain. It feels cruel to laugh, but just laughing out of amusement, not cruelty. Doing them a favor, really. I want to encourage people not to be afraid. The ability to be in the world and not be afraid of, is this person a reptilian? Or if you feel creeped out by someone or feel that fear, to just know that you have seniority in your space and you can raise the vibration to that space, love and amusement, and they'll just run for the hills. literally like little creepy crawlies running away from the light back into the shadows. That's how I experience
You know,
it.
there's something you had mentioned earlier about dolphins. So the dolphins and whales were seeded on our planet. And dolphins and whales had a water planet, and the whole planet was just a water planet. I had another meditation where I was actually conversing with a dolphin being, but the dolphin was standing upright
Right.
and kind of like legs,
Yeah.
the fins to balance as legs. I was having a conversation as a telepathic conversation with this dolphin being. All of these experiences and meditations create a cumulative effect. Like I said, with my telepathy, I was doing book learning and it wasn't working for me. So I just started saying hello to the ETs, and that helped me shift my vibrations. Anyone who's like, oh no, this is too hard, I'll never be able to communicate, give yourself permission, just start, and it's cumulative. It's absolutely cumulative effect.
I think of it like any of the energetic learning we're doing, similar to riding a bike. Like you can't read a book about riding a bike and really learn how to ride a bike. Right? You just got to get on a bike. And maybe there's some sort of helpful awareness that you could read about maybe like how to sit on the bike and pedal, but all of that's very intuitive. You just got to do it, right? So with telepathy, meditation, all of these things, there might be some help in reading something about it, but it's really, you just do it. You just jump right in. And
Right.
it's a
And
shift in awareness and vibration, and it happens as you do it, as you practice, as you just say yes to it and give it a try and find someone to match energy with, right?
yes.
I see that as my role as a teacher, and maybe you similar, is we're just creating that space for someone to match the energy and find their own information, right? When I'm teaching clairvoyance, I'm not teaching clairvoyance. You know what I mean? I can't teach you to be what you are. All I can do is provide a space for you to discover it and practice it and get familiar with it and fine tune it for your.
We help them remember that this is already who they are.
Yeah.
And we just create a space. We hold a vibration. It's a space where there's a lot of permission to have the experience that they're going to have. And it's a non-judgmental space. You're not doing it wrong. You can't do it wrong. It's your
Exactly. Yeah. Space, permission, validation, and that vibration of freedom to have it. Yeah. The vibration of havingness.
Yes.
Yay. Yay. Thank you so much, Marie. This has been a delight. Fun to discover all the different directions we can go on this topic for sure.
Yeah, they're making themselves known. This is what's happening on the planet right now. There's going to be a lot more disclosure and exposure.
Yeah, especially as we get to this place of just more freedom to change the structures. We've been living in the structure of needing to be dependent on oil and other physical resources for energy. I think that's all going to shift soon, and being able to use free energy and all that technology. Plenty of beings already using it. So that information's been coming through more and more.
I have to say I'm enthusiastic for the future. I am enthusiastic for the future. Yeah, it's going to be a little difficult and rocky on the way there, but by the time I'm 80 or 90 years old, I really think the planet's going to be a different place to be in a positive way.
Me too. Yeah. Yay. I'm glad we could be part of supporting that process.
Yes, absolutely.
So many other bright souls supporting this process of shifting things for the better here on the earth. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Marie.
Thank you. I'm glad we had this time together.